I encourage everyone to take a moment and breathe and take a tea cheers with a Jiri tea. A Jiri tea recognizes the beauty in shared stories and shared opportunities. Ajiri sources award-winning tea from Kenya, employs women in the region to handcraft the labels, and sends 100% of the profits back to the region to support orphan education. Save 10% on your order of Kenyan teas and coffee with the code BeautifullyHuman at ajiritea.com. AJIRIT.com. Tea mugs up. Hello and welcome to the Beautifully Human podcast. I'm Nick Sheesby. In this podcast, I speak with beautiful humans from all around the world, sharing with you their incredible stories, revealing the power in every human story, to spread love and humanity to a world that is in desperate need of it, to show that we can all connect in beautiful ways, no matter where we come from or what we look like. What you will find out is that we are all beautifully human. Let's all be beautifully human. Hello again and welcome to the Beautifully Human podcast. Thanks for tuning in from wherever in the world that you are. Today I am hanging out with Demi Wylde and we have such a rad conversation. We cover all kinds of ground from ghosts to sexuality and attraction and just overall talk about sex and how we're just all kind of released out into the wild with it and how he deals with that. And I'll let him tell you more about that. It's really beautiful, the work he's doing in that field. If you enjoy this podcast, follow along on Spotify, follow on Instagram at the Beautifully Human Podcast, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It helps get these stories out to more people, which is super rad. And enjoy this beautiful conversation. All right, so I'd love to start these off with a very broad overarching question and let you run with it and take this conversation wherever it leads to and say, tell me the story of your life.
Well, I was born in a little town called Visalia, California at 10:18 a.m. on September 2nd, 1988. That makes me a Virgo. If you're into that, I'm very into that. I had a single mother. Father was in and out of the picture most of my life, mostly out. And I had a stepfather in his place that we won't go into that just yet.
All right.
Yeah, I was always a very very rambunctious kid. I was an only child. I definitely hung out with the kids that were. I was also a little weird with the age group. I was kind of older than the rest of the people that I lived around, but I also didn't really have any family members that were around my age, mostly older. So I was like that middle child, kind of only child situation where I didn't really fit in with that anywhere.
Yeah.
And I definitely had a lot of time to myself in my imagination. So ever since I was little, I always remember playing imaginary games and stuff with my friends, or sitting in my room drawing or writing. And I definitely had a lot of creative energy from the beginning. My mom eventually got a stepdad and all this stuff. And so I lived there. So I lived in Visalia until I was probably 12 or 13, and we ended up moving down south to where my grandmother lived, down in Riverside. And my grandma got sick. She had a heart attack at that time, and so she had to have surgery. And so mom freaked out and said, "We got to go to grandma's."
Yeah.
And it was halfway through my sophomore year in high school, and I just kind of started getting used to being in school because I was not a very good school kid. And I was kind of uprooted during that time and ended up going to a whole new school halfway through the year. And my only friends at the time were books, really.
Yeah.
And so I remember I remember sitting at the lunchroom or lunch patio pretty much, and I was reading the Da Vinci Code. And as a 13-year-old, you know,
That's awesome.
that's pretty typical. But by my my I just had like finally had like these people just walk up and like, hey, like you seem kind of cool, like you want to come assimilate? And I was like, yeah, sure. And we that was pretty much like the time that I started to have friends. And complicated issues with that particular group of people, but you know, we definitely had, that was like when I first started like kind of coming into my own and having people to talk to that were around my age group. um yeah, I definitely, I don't know. Where do I go next? So pretty much I started like writing poetry a lot during that time, and so I basically had a lot of like feelings that I had to like, you know, work through. And I had I had my first boyfriend during that time.
All right.
And so I am gay. I grew up uh I came out around that time too, like shortly after my mom found notes that me and that particular boyfriend had passed back and forth, and she was super cool with it. And
Good, good.
like we, you know, loved it actually, because she's the ultimate fat gag.
Well, that's
More
fantastic though. That's
more
a
on that
good,
later.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And so, you know, from there I definitely had like a more of like an open um about or openness about myself, and I started getting involved in like theater and stuff. And I'd already been kind of involved in theater. I was always like, you know, theater, choir, that kind of kid. And I just really need to express myself. And I had never tried out for any plays, despite doing theater like, you know, several years. I never tried out for any plays. Um, uh, I tried out for my first play in junior year, and that was horrible because, like I mentioned before, I was not a very good school kid.
Yeah.
I managed to do mostly like B's and C's and a lot of F's and D's.
Yep.
And the ones that I did succeed in were English and theater, pretty much. Math did not do anything for me.
Yeah.
History did nothing for me. It was boring. Even the way that history was taught was just like not
Sure.
very good. Because I love history, but it wasn't the way that it wasn't what I wanted to listen to or
Right.
to learn. And so um, I tried out for my first play. Because my grades were so bad, the teacher had to pretty much like say, I can't let you in the play,
Oh man.
despite like knowing that this is kind of like the one thing that like I can like latch onto in school.
Yeah.
She's just like, I just can't, like, legally, you know, in the school terms, can't let you do it. And that was gut wrenching for me. I definitely withdrew a little bit more, and that was right around the time that my boyfriend and I broke up.
Hmm.
And it left like a left a hole in your soul, in that ABBA song.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, it left a hole in your soul, and I withdrew quite a bit, and I I just didn't know where to go anymore, and I suffered from a lot of depression during that time. And it wasn't until I this is a fun story. Um, I despite all this, like, you know, these feelings and stuff, I was still writing and all this. And but I started partying quite a bit. I was drinking a lot. I was smoking a lot of weed. Weed came first. My mom had a liquor cabinet that my friends always came over, and we all just raided at times. Um, and we she was super cool with it, but sometimes she would find that there was, you know, water in the vodka
Sure.
type
Yeah.
of situation. She was like,
Right.
wait a second. um but you know, she was always the mom that was like, you know, it's okay if you do it here. Like, just don't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
I'm a cool mom.
Right.
And so uh I continued along with that route for a while. You know, we were going to like concerts and stuff, going to shows. We were like the punk kids. We used to like hang out and go to like, you know, rock concerts and stuff and get wasted under the stairs. And and party with the big kids.
Yeah.
Um, and so we pretty much, that was mostly our lives until we were about 20. And turn 21, you start getting a different friend group and stuff. And I started hanging out with like my first group of gay friends. I didn't really have gay friends up until that point. And I found a new kind of like, this is a new kind of like group that I found myself in. So we weren't partying as much. In fact, they were more straight edge than anything. Like I
Yeah.
was the only one that smoked weed around that time. And now it's all the rage, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Everybody's now they all have alcoholism and all this stuff. But
Got that. Yeah.
around that time, I was like the newcomer and the partier. But you know, I had another boyfriend during that time. I had started to work at a bookstore. Excuse me. I had working at a bookstore at the time, and I worked at the kids section of Barnes and Noble. And anybody who knows me knows I hate kids. I was just happy to work at a bookstore because
Sure.
like books were my friends, and they still continue to be my friends at that time. And uh, it definitely, that was where I met my boyfriend, and he kind of stalked me into dating him, which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
He like really like was gunning for me, and I was like, okay, sure, whatever. Finally, we did date. Eventually, he did wear me down after a while, until things got a little too comfortable with him. I won't go into details, but it's this is just not quite the route that I want to go on either, and so I broke up with him, and I ended up moving to Seattle, and it was around that time that I had gotten my first DUI too,
Mm.
and I just wanted to like change of scenery. I'd done all the work. I'd, back then it was $2,000. Now it's like 10.
Yeah.
So learned that lesson really fast. Did not have to learn that again. But I moved to Seattle, and I went with my best friend, and I had found myself in like a new place. I can like kind of explore myself a little bit more. Like down here in Riverside, it was still kind of like, I didn't feel comfortable like being myself most of the time down here. Like I don't know if you've ever been to the Inland Empire, but it's not exactly gay friendly.
Yeah.
Despite the
Yeah.
fact that also I was, the weird kind of punk alternative
Sure.
person around town. I consistently have people chuck like cup noodles from their
Oh
moving
God.
vehicles at me, like walking
Jesus.
down the street, like crazy things.
Yeah,
Like
that's
what?
ridiculous.
The last time I was there, I was accosted by a homeless guy who said he was going to stab me with a needle. Like,
Jesus. Wow. All right.
so I had to get out of there real fast.
Yeah.
Um, and I came to Seattle, and Seattle is definitely more gay friendly. I could, and was able to explore myself quite a bit more. And I was going through a really tumultuous relationship too. Around the time it was, I had just left another boyfriend who was on and off, and we were quite abusive to each other. And I was leaving, and I'm like, I can't do this. I gotta go. And he followed me there and
Wow.
didn't leave. Um, and we began dating again, and things really just kind of like spiraled out of control again really fast, and enough so that I had to like leave my own house. And
Wow.
I didn't hit him, but he began throwing things out of the window and accosting me like at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh boy.
And I grabbed him in order to stop him from throwing my things out the window.
Yeah.
And I pulled him to the ground, and he got up and just said, I'm calling the cops in my own house, mind you.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, sure. And I patiently waited downstairs for the cops to come. And meanwhile, he's still throwing a fit upstairs and calling me every name in the book and all this stuff. And that was my first experience with in an abusive relationship. and the only experience I should say. Um, it was nightmarish. It was
Yeah.
hard to deal with, and I went to jail that night because in Washington, basically, if anybody is called, even if they don't find any reason, just because it's called for domestic violence, someone has to go. So I just volunteered. I
Wow.
said, let's go. Spent the night in jail. The next day, I gathered my things and I just left. I never saw him again. And it was it was a I realized that I didn't have to stay in a situation like that, and
Yeah.
I didn't have to um, put myself in that sort of toxic environment. And I just got my things and I left, and I ended up staying with a friend of mine. Ended up having very, I lived there for like maybe a year and a half, and got into another very loving relationship, and it was lovely. And it was around the time I started doing drag.
I was
um,
actually going to ask you about that. We'll touch on that later.
yeah, yeah. Did you see? Okay, you may have seen the pictures on my Instagram or something that I
Yes.
posted recently. These are the only ones that still exist. I got rid of all of those.
It's
Um,
fantastic.
but I had moved uh into me and my boyfriend got to a place, and I started doing that. And I was a manager. I was really having some really good things happen to me at the time, and I finally felt great. And probably 2015 was when things started going bad. We were together for like we were together 4 years at that point, and I think things kind of stagnated in the relationship, and both of us started like kind of maneuvering in a different direction, opposite direction, not necessarily together. And even though we lived together, it was very kind of like we're growing apart.
Yeah.
And uh, because of the drag, because of like you working in nightlife for that amount of time, and all this stuff, I kind of developed a little bit of a drinking problem again.
Hmm.
I've never really had a drinking problem, but just because I was around it and that was kind of the culture that I was in, people would just buy me drinks, and it was
Sure.
just. And I had to start kind of tricking people, like doing like little things like ordering a cherry coke at the bar and like carrying it on my person at all times, because people would just see that I had a drink in my hand,
Yeah.
not necessarily what kind of drink it was. Doing little tricks like that to like kind of stop drinking.
Yeah. Smart.
But I still had those party moments where I was hanging out with people that were kind of like doing the same thing. And so cut to a really horrible night of drinking plus food poisoning the next day, and my ex finding out that I cheated on him
It's a rough day.
all in one day.
Yeah.
Mind you, it was also Christmas Day.
Oh boy. The icing on the cake there.
Yeah. And you know, just everything came crashing down, and I ended up finding I had to get out of there. Basically, it was like wasn't necessarily bad, but just like there's just so much animosity and stuff, and it wasn't getting any better. I just had to leave, and I moved to back to California. I went back to college. I uh, got sober for the first time, and I I came back to Riverside for a little bit. That's where I was going back to college for. So I already started going, and I just wanted to like continue over there. So I studied communications and journalism. And I really found my voice as a writer and an editor, because I first semester I was an editor on the school paper. I was like, this is like I can do this.
Yeah.
And that's where they had a podcast set up. I didn't do a podcast there, but I had written like stuff for podcasts there.
Cool.
And I was wanting to do my own. I had many ideas, and I had gotten involved with a friend of mine and up in San Francisco, and he was wanting to move to LA, and so he was like, "Let's move to LA." So I was like, you know what? I guess so. Like when opportunity knocks, you go, and so I dropped out, um, because I was just like I have the skills I needed. I'm a much better person than I was before, and I now know what I want to do, and I want to be a writer.
Yeah.
And came to LA to pursue that. I was working as a waiter at the time, and that's basically what led me here. I'm now hosting my own podcast and writing articles for Medium about sex and the trauma thereof. And uh, yeah, I've written my second book now too of poetry.
That's amazing.
Thank you. It
That's
actually
so
just
cool.
came out like this month, like a week ago or a
Oh,
couple days ago.
that is so awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was going. So there's so much throughout that story that I was
there's a
like,
lot.
I wanted to jump in, but I wanted to let you roll through it. I can fully relate on the drinking part.
Yeah,
3 years, almost 3 years ago, I was at the beginning stages of liver failure because of my alcoholism. So
yeah,
now I am coming up on 3 years sober. Thankfully, I lived through it. And I work in the music industry, so I've had a lot of people. One in particular, I was tour managing a band, and I had a guy who, awesome dude, but he struggled, and so I would be able to give him one sip of vodka, and then I would have to pour water in the shot glasses. I would talk to all the bartenders. If anywhere we'd go, I'd be like, give him like a taste of vodka, and then I'd just get him water the rest of the time. Because if he got the
right.
taste, he was in. But like that's such a smart way to do it, of just getting any kind of drink and like having it on your person.
Just clutching onto it all night long.
Yeah, just like nope, I'm good. I'm good. Um, yeah, it's such an, as you were talking about it, I'm like, it's such an easy path to go down, especially when you're just around people that are doing it. And I don't
Right.
think people realize the slippery slope of it, because especially in the pandemic, I know we'd get on Zooms and everybody would be like, I was drinking at noon. And it was a funny, what else do we have to do? But I'm like,
Right.
it's a really, especially with my sensitivity to it, because I took mine to a massive, massive extreme. It's like,
Mm.
it, even if it's casual and it's fun, it's like, you gotta reel it in at some point. You gotta notice that about
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I can massively relate to that throughout your story. Um, I want to talk to you about drag. Let's just get into that.
Okay.
First off, what is your drag name?
Venus Lapinus. Yeah.
Venus Lapinus. That
It's
is
French. The
fantastic.
the La Lapinus. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
Lapinus. That's so good.
I got into it. I got into it because a friend of mine at the time, I had expressed already some interests right around the time that like me and my friends were really getting into like RuPaul's Drag Race, and my ex was a DJ, so we were around nightclubs all the time. We would hang out with other queens and all this stuff. I'm like, I can do that. I'd done theater. I know how to make costumes. I can style a wig now, but I taught myself how to style a wig, um, style wigs, and I'm entirely self-taught. And it was just one of those things that kind of like just fell into my lap, kind of, because a friend of mine, she had said, I'm starting this open stage thing, like I want you to come do it. And I was like, maybe had like one outfit at the time. And and so I, pieced things together and just said, you know what, sure, let me do one show. One show turned into the 3-year, 4-year stint.
That's amazing.
And then I started hosting that show about 6 months in because she didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Or maybe
That
it was about a year and I started hosting the show actually. But yeah, I that's also why I went back to college. I said I'm gonna study communications because I've already done all that. I've done public speaking. I've done
right.
the writing aspect of it now, and I just basically need to fine tune it, put them all together.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how like that avenue led me into this avenue now.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple weekends ago, and I was like, I think it would be so much fun to do.
Oh,
I
it's so much fun.
I was like, she had always wanted to do it, and she's just kind of like doesn't want to do it on her own. And I was like, let's fucking do it. I will come with you
Right.
because we had a Big Lebowski themed party for a friend of
Oh
ours,
wow.
and I went as Bunny or from the Big
Nice.
Lebowski. And funny enough, Tara Reid actually commented on an Instagram photo of mine, which I was like, that's pretty hilarious.
Nice.
So I got Bunny approved, but I was like, they were like, you're just so comfortable. And I was like, well, who gives a shit? Like, I'm having a good time.
Right.
I'm owning it. Like, whatever. And so I'm trying to convince her to do it, and I'm trying to come up with a good drag name. I don't have one yet, but it'll
Well,
come to me.
you could do the classic way. You can do what is it? Your childhood pet name plus the street that you grew up on.
That'd be Pepper Foxwood.
That's a hot okay, that's a fucking hot one. That is a hot
Pepper
one. I can
Foxwood.
curse, right?
Yeah,
I have a potty mouth. Okay, cool.
yeah. Please do. Yeah. Pepper Fox. Fuck. That's
Pepper, what is it again? Pepper what?
Pepper Foxwood.
Pepper Foxwood. That's oh,
That might
oh,
be
that's a
it.
good one.
I mean,
Damn.
I make the shitty joke if I ever was a cage dancer, I'd just be Nick Cage.
Okay.
But I'm like, that doesn't really go for drag. So maybe Pepper
Pepper
Foxwood it is.
Foxwood.
But
Damn, I might have to steal that. I'm gonna write that down actually. That's a really hot.
maybe
That's
we,
like a stripper name. That's like a
yeah,
full-on stripper name.
yeah. Maybe we can like co-headline as the dueling Pepper Foxwoods together one
Oh
day.
man. So my original drag name was I came up with both my drag names. But my original one was Vivi Virgo.
Okay.
And when I would introduce myself in the club, people would say Fifi. So it
Sure.
didn't really
Yeah.
I just had to say no, this isn't gonna work.
Right.
And I remembered this is actually where it originated from was did you ever watch the Disney Channel movie Xenon Girl the 21st Century?
I didn't. No.
Well, she had a catchphrase that was Zetus Lapidus. And so I came up with Venus Lapinus from that.
I love it. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. All right, I need to write that mine down as well.
That is a very good one. That is a very good one.
I wish I remembered what my friend's was because she has just a badass. She came up with a badass one right off the jump, and I was like, "Damn it, I'll figure it out." And so you were sent to me in my life to
Oh yeah.
begin the Pepper Foxwood era.
And that's a classic way.
Life.
It doesn't really work out for a lot of people. Like my original, if I were to go that route, it would have been Snowball Hemlock. Yeah, that just doesn't work.
Sometimes they're fantastic, and sometimes it's like,
yeah, it just didn't work.
That's too funny. All right, so something else I saw on your when I was snooping on you, your hookup horror stories.
Yes, there's many.
Yeah.
So obviously, I've had a lot of like throughout my life, like sex has always kind of like both befuddled and bemused me. I never really got it. I lost my virginity when I was 15. I ever since then I just felt like I was on this journey of like, you know, and especially as a gay man, like it's just kind of like thrown at us like from everywhere that we see. It's just always around us. And so like, you know, I've at times gone down like these very very dark treacherous roads of hookups and led to some painfully traumatic but also wildly beautiful moments that ended up kind of like really shaping who I am. And one of my favorite shows of all time is Sex and the City. So like I always saw myself as Carrie Bradshaw.
Yeah.
And you know, she's a sex writer for the New York Times. And I am a hopeless romantic. And I feel like when the world doesn't necessarily have that same kind of instincts and you're kind of like lured into like these, you know, into these relationships that are obviously mostly casual and all this stuff, but like you still kind of hold out this hope, but it still leads to some pretty crazy stories.
Yeah.
So I started writing them down. And so far I have titles for like probably 70, but I've written probably, 10,
Yeah.
15 in some way or another. And eventually I wanted to write a book about it. And I began writing that book during quarantine. Um, well, let me start a little bit before that. It started off as a podcast idea.
Yeah.
Um, so I had a friend of mine come on board who was a virgin, and we had this idea for this podcast. And I'm like, well, I'm a slut, so when you're
Right.
not,
Yeah.
so like it led to like a really interesting concept. And
Totally.
the whole idea didn't pan through because we got involved in like this person at work who may have it, I don't know if you're supposed to audition for a podcast like of your own creation, you know what I
Right.
mean? And then they wanted us to pay to, it just seemed like a scam. So like we're like, this is not the way that we're going to do this. And she eventually kind of backed out, and
Okay.
I was going through a thing at the time. And so I said, you know what, let's put this on back burner. I began I made 2 episodes, but the way I went about it was audio storytelling.
Hmm.
And so it was kind of like all these sound effects and all this stuff. It required a lot of editing. So for like a 12-minute episode, it ended up being like hours of editing.
Yeah.
The way I was doing it, and I'm meticulous with details. And so I'm like, this is just not the way that I'm supposed to do this. And again, put it on the back burner. And so I just started kind of writing the stuff out like last summer. I had written quite a bit, and I'm like, you know what, this is becoming more than just this. It became kind of like a secondary book too, which I wanted to combine them and put them all together, but this is turning into more like 2 separate ideas. So one of them, Hookup Horror Stories, is my actual stories, from even losing my virginity to current ones
Yeah.
that I've had within the last year or so. And plus it's just more of, it's going to turn into more of like a thing, but I just started releasing that stuff on Medium.
Yeah.
And then the second one is kind of like a deviant's guide to sex, which is kind of like, we're not given a handbook like
Right.
when it comes to sex. Like no one, even sex ed in school was like awkward. All they teach you is how babies are made, and that's
Right.
pretty much it. They don't give you anything about like interpersonal relationships, how to deal with abusive relationships or abusive partners,
Right.
the history of sex. Even like the history of sex is like,
Yeah.
age tale as old as time.
Right.
And so we didn't really get to explore that stuff, and I started putting stuff out on Medium, regarding this, or like how to handle booty calls,
Right. None of it. Nobody talks about any of that. You're not
And so,
warned when you're young. It's
no,
just
not at
like
all.
here, like you get hair down there, and then like you get a boner and go free to the world.
And then let loose. Yeah, exactly.
And then you have
a lot of
kids.
this stuff. That's where a lot of these kids get these really bad situations and putting themselves in danger and stuff. And because we're just not taught. And so
Yeah.
that became a deviant's guide to sex. And it that's like a whole secondary thing that I'm kind of working on. That requires a lot more research than I'm willing to to do quite a bit, but I've written quite a bit of it. And yeah, I've just started releasing that stuff over the past couple of months on Medium, and I found Medium to be a very great service of just really brilliant writers. You can find such brilliant writing on there. Not only like you can find poetry on there, you can find like just essays, stories, like really brilliant things, and it's just self-published, and these people really cool concepts that just aren't given the moment, in publicity.
Yeah, I think that's so important that someone who's been out there and had all these experiences, it's good to write that. I mean, sometimes it's horrible to relive our our hookup stories, but
Oh yeah.
it's also good to just put it out there and say, hey, be careful. This is the shit that you can get yourself into. Because, yeah, like
Yeah.
you said, I mean, I know I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and I mean, it was the most childish shit hearing what they taught me in
Completely.
fifth grade, I think it was. And it was
Hmm.
like, you got the puberty talk, and that's what they called it. It was like, we're talking about puberty. And then it was like nothing else
The birds and
past
the
that.
bees. That's it.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, there's so much more to it, as you know. So it also put me in mind of, have you ever listened to Mortified Nation?
No. What is that?
It's a podcast. There's also some episodes on Netflix. It's a it's a show. It's brilliant. They just have people come on and read their diaries from when they were younger.
Wow. Okay.
Dude, it's so brilliant. I think you would love it. It's just everyday people just standing up in front of people reading. And it kind of reminded me of that, of like, it's just so open and raw and real of your experiences in life, and you're just sharing that knowledge. But it's also like funny in a way of like, oh, we can
Hmm.
all get a chuckle out of it, but like also pay attention because this shit's real, kind of deal.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing that you're out there sharing that, because I think when people talk about sex, they get dubbed as like a slut or it's bad or whatever it is. Even still in our day and age of
Hmm.
very over sexualized culture, I think it's still like, if you talk about it so much, I think people get a little turned off to it. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's such a big part of every person's life. If you're having it or you're not having it, you want it, you're addicted to it. There's so many different facets that we need to talk about it more.
Completely. Yeah. And what it really just boils down to is, in this age where things are so spread apart, and everything's kind of at our fingertips, so you don't really, but everything seems so far at the same time, we're still searching for like a genuine connection. And when we don't get that, we tend to kind of fall into like these traps of, it's almost like a siren song, it sounds so beautiful from over here, and but leads you to like these really rocky moments, these really rocky territories. And
Yeah.
how do we navigate those territories once we're there?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's so true. And especially coming out of the time that we're in, not having any kind of connection. This is
Any.
as much connection as anybody had.
Yeah.
And everything's at our fingertips, but it also, at our fingertips, literally means on the computer or on our phones. And that just seems so far away. It seems so distant to what
Yeah.
we knew as kids, is like physically touching things. Now it's just like, oh, okay, just go online, we'll see it. And it just keeps everything feeling so close, yet like a
Right.
universe away.
Yeah. Well, even as a gay man, we are kind of like spoon fed this kind of like hypersexualized this thing. And when we don't necessarily know how to navigate it, or we don't really have a blueprint for like how that kind of looks to, there's just such shame around it.
Yeah,
And it's hard to kind of like really grapple with interpersonal relationships in a deep and meaningful way when we don't really have a blueprint for that. We have our parents, but most of us most of us don't necessarily have great relationships with our parents, or
yeah,
father figures or mother figures, or you know family is just like a whole different realm.
sure, yeah,
And I'm fortunate enough that I do still have my mother, at least. My grandmother was the best thing too. That was around the time that I moved back to California, and but she was dying of lung cancer. And I that's a whole nother realm. But
yeah,
she still visits me. She's still around. But yeah, like I'm very fortunate that I have, that side of my family is still good. My grandparents on my dad's side are still good. I don't really talk to my dad though. They've been together for like 50, 60 years. So they're kind of like a good, what I would want, what the ideal is. They have their own, they have issues. Sure. Everyone does,
sure,
every
yeah,
relationship does. But I mean, at least they have a relationship that has withstood the test of time. whereas everything kind of crumbles around us every couple of years.
Yeah. So in that realm, like what do you see as like what are you looking up to in your in the culture surrounding gay men? Like what do you look up to when you're looking to see like good examples of that?
Man, I'm still looking to find
Okay.
I'm still
Yeah.
looking to find someone that, I do have, several friends that have been in very loving, stable relationships and stuff, but then at the same time, I would say by and large, more of them break up over time. And, even just as short as, months to just a few years, my longest relationship by far was 5 years.
Hmm.
And even still, like, that required so much work at the time that neither of us really had the knowledge to navigate. We just kind of got comfortable.
Yeah.
And um right now, the only person that kind of comes to mind is I have not really people that I knew on a personal level, but I've known of them for a very long time, and they had, several adopted kids. And you know well, a side note, I have another couple that I used to live with, who now have their own daughter, and lesbian couple. And so it's just really it's different because, like, we don't really, I'm fortunate that those people exist, but at the same
Yeah.
time, there's no one in my immediate periphery that kind of I can, like, look to have that.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering, and this is just me going off on some journey in my mind of I know what men are like, and
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if it's that way, like, and I'm not making an excuse of like, oh, we're just men, so like
Men are
we fuck
disgusting.
everything up. Right. That's where I'm at of like men are typically
Gay
pigs
men are the
and
are and gay men are like rancid, disgusting heathens. My God, if you knew the stories, but I
so
digress.
I mean, do you find that coming into your relationships where it's harder because men do have that typical nature to them?
Yes. For example, open relationships are the rage these days.
Yeah.
And um I toyed with the idea that I could do that too, and come to realize that that does not work for me. And
Yeah.
I I did not even know how jealous I was.
Sure. Yeah.
At the same time, I also, like, need a little bit of freedom. And, you know, it was just like a case of, like, extremes for me. So, like, I didn't know how to navigate somewhere in the middle. And some people do, some people don't. And so I'm like, I think on a personal level, I probably do need to be in more of, like, a traditional sense as much as possible, I
Yeah.
think, because that gives me at least a little bit of a framework to work with.
Sure.
However, that being said, there might be a little wiggle room at times that, maybe, like, on an occasion, a threesome,
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that it's just comes down to, like, a personal exploration of self in a free and loving environment that is free of judgment and persecution.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is I have friends that have tried the open thing and I'm like I think that just literally opens you up to finding out how much you're like, no, I don't want that. But also at the same time it's like I don't know if I just want one person or
Yeah.
it's such a fine line of like do you just want to have sex with everybody because you're single and like just go fuck around all day or like have a relationship and then like yeah it's my my two friends that were in one together and then like the horror stories that were coming back from the two of them and I was like
Mm-hmm.
you
And then
two
once you
just
take that step with your SO, it's it's hard to come back from that too.
Yeah.
Because you've
Yeah.
seen that person on a different level, and
Right.
who knows what that person's thinking now.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
So that,
especially with like the trauma involved in like sex and stuff too. Like
right.
I feel like people don't really necessarily talk about the stuff that they've been through for the shame and stuff that's surrounding it. And when you bring that stuff into a relationship and you haven't really processed it, like that's where I'm at pretty much. Like I'm still kind of processing a lot of stuff. Like I don't
Yeah.
think I'm at all ready to be in a relationship. I would like one, yes, but I need to like figure out where I'm at first. But like if you haven't necessarily processed all that stuff, it's hard to kind of like start fresh with someone because now you're
Totally.
bringing in all that old stuff with you unknowingly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. And it's, again, it's just such a topic that so many people struggle to have those conversations on, where it's like where I come from, and
Mm-hmm.
I went to a school that my dad was just like, I'll pay for this school, and it was a Baptist college in Virginia that was it was Jerry Falwell's school. I don't know if you know of him, but he's
Mm-hmm.
super super conservative, and I saw so many people getting done with that school, and they just never had sex because they weren't allowed having sex because it's in the Bible not to have sex before they're married, and I. Not even joking, they would get married, and I was like, "Why are you getting married?" And they're like, "So we can have sex." And I was like, that's a horrible idea.
That's
Right.
oh
It's
no.
such an awful idea. But also, then I'm sitting there where it's like, I'm 36 years old. And so it's like, is it weird to talk about it at my age, where it's like, if you become sexually active, say even 18, that's half of a lifetime that you've been sexually active.
Yeah.
So why would it be bad to say what the amount that you've had? But it's literally half a lifetime.
Yeah. I'm 32 now. I've been active since I was 15 or 16. So that's just
Yeah.
over half my life. Like
Yeah.
I still have nothing. I still have no idea anything about it.
Right. Well, that's another part of it. Yeah. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know. I think it's really beautiful what you're doing to bring those to light and just talk about them, because it, as much of everything in life, of just getting it out there and talking about it and normalizing it. Like, you're going to
Yeah.
have traumas. You're going to have the best stories ever. You're going to have the fucking worst stories ever. You're going to have all that surrounding even sex. I mean,
Yeah.
all facets of life, but especially sex. And
Completely.
the more we talk about it, the more two men can talk about that on different sides of attractions.
Totally.
It's really beautiful to be like, this is
It's the
sex
great
is sex.
equalizer. Everyone
Yeah.
does it.
Right. You are created, if you don't think you were created by sex of some
Exactly.
form.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's really beautiful that you're bringing it out in the hookup horror story way, but also writing from the deviant side too, of like, here's the experiences. And because I think too, people, if people are going through sex addiction or just
Hmm.
wanting sex all the time, it's like, I think that they're either afraid to talk about it because people will call them a slut, or just think they're
Hmm.
a horrible person. But it's like,
Or they think that because it's sex that it's not actually an addiction.
right.
I've heard that a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
It's you know I it's an escape,
Yeah.
and a lot of gay men too also go the route with sex and drugs,
Hmm.
and that's where it gets really tricky, and because it ends up kind of rewiring your brain in such a way that things are um it's just like you can't have one without the other. It's like peanut butter and jelly, and that's not. I'm not saying like have your fun, sure, but
Yeah.
when you start doing, when you start kind of like, going off the deep end, it's hard to come back.
Yeah,
And I've down that road myself, and
definitely.
I'm still working through that. I'm still processing that in my
Yeah.
own way.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
it's so nice to be able to talk about those things for your sake and for other people who
yeah,
are hiding from the fact that they are out there slumming around too, and they're feeling bad about it. It's
Yeah,
like, do you, but also like just be careful
just be
on all
careful.
on all facets, like with your heart, with your head, with your sex, with all of it.
Yeah, just conscious sex is something that I just advocate for. Have your fun, do whatever, but be conscious of the things that you're doing and of your body. Your body is a temple,
Yeah.
and don't just be haphazard with your temple. Love your temple,
Yeah.
treat it as such, because we are divine creatures. You know, we are. Sex is an act of God. It's the actual act of creation.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the most visceral sense, and there's just something divine about that. So you don't want to give away your divinity willy nilly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We were
Sure.
talking about podcasts. Talk to me
Yeah.
about your podcast that you have going right now.
Sure. It's called The Cosmic Journey with Demi and Jay. I host it with my best friend Jay Maceo. I started it kind of like this was after I did the Hookup Horror Stories one, and I said, you know what, I need to do something else. And I had this really amazing astrology reading from Angel Idealism. Completely. If you need to look up this lady on YouTube, she is the best thing ever.
All right.
Um, uh, but I had a wonderful reading with her last May, I believe it was, and she told me that you're going to work out of your home. Duh. Work out of your home, broadcasting this and that, and she gave such detail that it was basically like have something metaphysical about it. And like, knowing me, I'm all about ghosts, witches, vampires, space. I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you name it, I'm into it. But I was like, okay, well, how do I marry these two ideas? And this is where A Cosmic Journey came from. And I started my own on my own. Jay was like the second person I interviewed for it. And I had forgotten what a good, like, it was probably like the longest episode of any of them. It was like 2.5 hours.
Wow.
But I had forgotten, like, I mean, I knew he was always like a very interesting person. Like, I've known him for like 12 years, 13 years at this point. But like, I didn't realize that, like, how special that the two of us together could be in a work sense. And so I'm like, this just seems so natural, seems so fun. Let's put this together. And it was Angel Idealism actually said during that reading that on this date, you'll find your co-host for the show. And that date was his birthday last
Whoa.
year. And
That's
I was like,
amazing.
wait a second. And that was like the day the episode aired or something like that too. And I was like, wait a second. Okay, sure. So it was kind of like, it felt destined.
Yeah.
And and then ever since then, it's just been a blast. Like, we now talk about science and spirituality. We have a new segment where we talk about everything like tech and space and just really funny stories that we find on the internet. And then we have like really cool interviews with people who range from like artists to astrologers to all this stuff. And very soon we might have Angel Idealism on the show again.
Oh, awesome.
But it's just been a blast to do and to work together. And we've been doing it. We're on season 2 now, so it's just like really cool. And we just started doing stuff on YouTube as well.
Awesome. All right. So while we're here, where do the listeners find you?
Our website is acosmicjourneypod.com. You can follow us on Instagram at acosmicjourneypod. Twitter is at acosmicjournpod. The joke is we couldn't afford the EY.
Yeah.
but and then just pretty much anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any stories of experiences with ghosts or anything?
Several, but which one do I want to tell? Probably the one that people have heard most. The one where I was kind of seeing this guy. His name was Ziggy at the time, and he was super into ghosts and stuff. So we wanted to go ghost hunting, and we were hanging out with my friend Brittany. at this time, and we had looked up like where is the spookiest place like go ghost hunting at, and we stumbled on this website that was talking about Hillside Cemetery in Redlands, California. And the stories were going that there's like all sorts of like satanic rituals and all this like, you know, really like people going missing around the area. And the city of Redlands itself is actually in the center of like a giant pentagram of like 5 other cities.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, okay, this is kind of like, we got to go check this place out. And me, Brittany, and Ziggy all hopped into my 94 Toyota Corolla and like drove to this place at first in the daytime. And the first time that we looked around, it was like, okay, we got to like scope this place out. And I brought a pentagram, and we were able to like walk around, or a pentagram, a pendulum. And I was trying to like, you know, talk to spirits with it. And we walked around the area, kind of like scouted it out. All right, cool. We can figure this place out. Let's come back at night. Came back that night, and the gate was closed. So we went up to the gate, and the gate itself is like probably one of the creepiest things you can ever like drive up to at night. It's just got these 2 giant stone columns like straight up like into the sky pretty much, and just like the biggest like wrought iron gate. And you couldn't get up the sides. We were trying to like hop over the stone slabs into the gate from the front entrance gate, but we couldn't do that. They were up too high. I was like, let's just try to find a place around the back. And so we went around the back, and Ziggy was in the back of my car, and he was getting the camera ready. And me and Brittany were like in the front seat, and we were looking out of the window straight at the little gate that we were going to hop over in just a few minutes. And then she and I like kind of like start kind of seeing this thing, this like shape, kind of like this gray shape, kind of like we thought someone was like walking towards us. And we were like, I'm like, Brittany, do you see that? And she goes, yeah, what is that? And it's getting closer and closer to us. And Ziggy couldn't hear us. He was still kind of like doing stuff in the back. And as it was getting closer to us, we could see that it was just like this amorphous, whitish, see-through blob, like walking up to the gate. And I'm like, Brittany, do you fucking see that right now? And she and I both got chills.
Oof.
And it was just like, what in the fuck is that? Like, this is literally like, it was almost like out of a cartoon. How strange, how surreal this was. And it was coming closer and closer to us. We were not that far from the gate. And I was like, shit, we gotta go. And I just like slammed. I have never driven away so fast. I like burnt rubber, like getting away from this thing, and just drove off super fast. And Ziggy's in the back going, wait. Go back. I gotta get a picture of it. I'm like, no, we're not going back. This cannot happen. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. And
Wow.
I've spoken to ghosts. Like I've felt spirits, but never have I seen a spirit.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. So yeah. And I love that Ziggy's like, yeah, let's get a photo, as if the ghost's gonna go like,
it's just gonna pose for us. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man. So when you speak to spirits, what how do you go about it when you're feeling them?
Well, I just acknowledge their presence, first of all. Like I'm not like a medium or anything, but I've had experiences where I've felt spirits and stuff. And, you know, obviously my grandma talks to me all the time.
Yeah.
But that's more like a personal thing. When spirits want to be seen, they'll make themselves seen.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was a kid, I used to have this kind of an imaginary friend. But I called him Fred. I'm like, what was his name? Fred. But to me, he would appear kind of like as just like a black shape. It wasn't necessarily like a physical form or anything, but I just kind of like felt him there. Couldn't necessarily see him, but like you kind of like in your mind, kind of like see what he is showing up as.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like with my two eyes though. And at night, however, one particular night, Fred was in my room, and I had just kind of like woken up and turned over, and I felt him kind of like touching the back of my head. That was the first time I felt anything too. That
Wow.
scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Fred, sure. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that again. Like, don't touch me. Thanks. That was weird.
Yeah. Good Lord. Good
But
Lord.
when they want to be seen, they'll make themselves known.
Yeah.
My grandma's the one that kind of talks to me most, but she mostly communicates to me in dreams.
Yeah.
Um, I'll know it's her. Everything seems very vivid. It's just, and I'll remember when I wake up, but most of the time I don't really remember my dreams.
Yeah.
But I remember when she's visiting. In fact, just after she passed away, she visited me in my dreams, and I woke up just like crying.
Oh, I'm sure.
But yeah, it's definitely like something that I feel like I can exercise a little bit more. Like if I knew where to be trained, if I knew
Right.
there was some sort of Hogwarts, that
Yeah.
I can go to.
Yeah, I feel like that could be, if you're looking for something, it could be like either really good or just complete bullshit.
Yeah,
Getting
completely.
into a training with somebody.
Oh, well, you know what? Actually, we interviewed someone actually for our next episode. She actually went to the only thing that could be considered like a proper like
Hmm.
medium school, but it's all the way in England.
Okay.
Um, and
That's
they've been
cool.
around for like a couple centuries, she said, but she went there for like I think it was like a 10-day, like she went there twice, like once for a 7-day and once for a 10-day. Because they do like these little intervals and stuff of people where they come and literally teach you proper ways to harness that
Oh,
power.
that's
So
really
everyone kind
cool.
of has it. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of like how much you want to go down that route.
Right. Yeah. Um all right. I've been hearing a lot recently too about all this like Pentagon and everything reviewing these alien files. What do you feel about this?
I'm still waiting. It's supposed to be out at this point,
I know.
or maybe it's the end of the month. From what we gathered, it was around Christmas time last year and they'll release the documents, sure, but they're going to be like blacked out beyond all
Right.
recognition.
Yeah.
So, however, we're getting to the point as a society and as a culture that these things are taken more seriously. And
Yeah.
there's actually been a pact that had been formed um, in in Washington that is aiming to have more of this stuff revealed
Yeah.
properly. So I mean, there's things are changing all around us, and I think the only thing that can kind of give our minds a break of like the monotony of the last like 5 years or so is like, we need something real. We
We
need
need
something
aliens.
tangible.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
need something otherworldly to get the shit out of our minds.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm excited and I'm anxious to see, but I feel like it's just gonna be like a very blanket statement of like, well, we don't know, so we'll call it unidentified, and that's as far as it'll go.
Well, that's the whole reason why they wanted to change it to UAPs is they didn't want it to be having the stigma of UFOs
Right,
anymore. So
right,
now they're kind of like finagling their way. I mean, something was just revealed not that long ago that the Pentagon, yes, they had picked up wreckage at some point and been testing it, and that there was like a video confirmed from the military or something that had actual like several UFOs on camera,
yeah,
and it was just approved by the CIA. It says, yeah, that was a real thing. So
yeah,
I mean, they're doing it without much fanfare,
right,
which I think they know what they're doing. They're kind of like there's no giant broadcast. They're just kind of like sweeping it. Yeah, okay, there it is, because
right.
they just have to at this point.
Yeah. I'm just excited. I mean, the thing that keeps me being like, oh shit, something's happening, because the pilots were just freaking out, and they came out, and it's not really like a goal. You're not going to advance yourself by saying you saw something. It's
Yeah.
not the like, hey, I'm cool, I saw this. It's like you
Yeah.
kind of
They
step it out.
they do everything going. I think they maybe stopped doing this, but they pretty much say, at one point they're having people like, yes, if you saw something, you have to sign an NDA.
Mm.
But now they're kind of like, well, we don't really think that that's the right way to go. We just need to like have people
Yeah.
not say it,
Right,
let
right.
us say it, But
Y-
pilots see this stuff all the time.
Yeah, I
They're just
have
kind of
to.
quieted.
Right. Um, I'm just going to use the pilot's theme as a transition to a question I ask everybody on this, and it's about travel, not space travel. But
Okay.
if I were to come to you with a plane ticket to anywhere in the world, obviously COVID restrictions and all that shit aside, where would you fly to?
Well, um, I had heard this question earlier and I should have had more. I was listening to one of your recent episodes earlier. But the first time I went out of the country was actually in 2019. I had gone to London for the first time with my mom. And we had a blast. And I saw Stonehenge.
Cool.
I saw Platform 9 3/4 from Harry Potter
Yes. Awesome.
universe.
Yep.
I had a very cool experience there. Because we were there for like a whole week pretty much, and it was just great. So I did that. I went to Europe. I if there's somewhere else there, I'm not necessarily sure if there's a place that I would want to go because I'm more of a beach person.
Okay.
I love the ocean. I love warm weather. I lived in Seattle for 6 years and I fucking hated it because there was so much rain.
Yeah.
I had to come back to California and be like, this is where I belong.
Here I am.
But I think if I were to go anywhere, it would have to be somewhere tropical. I've never been to Hawaii.
Hmm.
Maybe Maui.
All right.
Maybe Maui.
That's a cool one. I
Yeah,
went.
my grandma, I remember when I was a kid, she got a little bit of money and she went to Hawaii for a week and came back with like, a lei for me and like all this cool stuff. Like she brought a ukulele back. I never taught
Yes.
myself how to play it, but I had a ukulele at one point. I've never actually been to Hawaii though. I've just always wanted to go. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think I might go to Maui.
Cool. I like that. I like that answer. That's so awesome. The first place I ever went to, and this has been like 7 years ago or something like that, was London too. And it just felt so, I was just so happy to be out of
It's
this
so
country.
surreal.
It was
I
just so fun.
it was I can't even like explain how magical that trip was because at one point like, one of my favorite bands of all time is Block Party. And
Yeah.
so
Love
I
Block Party.
love Kelly Garriga is my hero. I had this like fantasy in my head that I would like meet him and we fall in love and blah blah, blah all that stuff.
Keep it
I
going.
know he's married and has a kid, but like
Details. Details.
in my little fantasy, I
Yeah.
that was what was gonna happen. But I ended up wandering around by myself one day and I found this really cool like I heard music playing and I found this really cool kind of like courtyard that had like a reggae festival going on. And
Awesome.
I was like, this is cool. I'm like walking around. I had African food over there for the first time. And I walked out and turns out that courtyard was for the King's College.
Wow.
And I turned a corner and then sure shitting, there's a mural of Kelly Okereke saying that he studied literature there. And I was like, found you.
Got you.
I found you. Like
That's
they have,
incredible.
people that have graduated there, they have like these big window paintings or whatever, or window art that has their
Yeah.
pictures and stuff on it and talks about what they studied and all that stuff. And I was like, hey, I found him.
That's incredible. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that story. That's so good. Yeah, I just that is definitely what I've missed most during COVID was just traveling and having those moments where you're just kind of wandering around and find a reggae festival in London. It's so beautiful.
Oh, I'm also the kind of person, I don't know how much of this I want to like talk about like from a political perspective as I try not to get political and stuff like this, but I was very like I needed to do something
Yeah.
around the time of the protests and stuff. So
Hmm.
I went to a couple here in LA, and I was just like, I need to see where the other parts of the world are. I was getting really like kind of cooped up, and I'm like, I need to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I spent like 3 weeks backpacking from DC to Boston
Cool.
last summer
That's
around
amazing.
June. Yeah, oh man, there was a lot that happened that summer, and I I definitely had a spiritual experience of sorts. But I'm that kind of person that like I will just get up and go
Yeah.
and go somewhere and not know not know anybody. I'd never been to DC, never been to Boston before. I've been in New York once, and I just like wanted to see all this stuff. So I went to a protest in DC. I saw steps of the White House. I saw all the artwork and stuff that was around. I love street art too. It's like street art is
Yeah.
like my favorite thing in the world. I will find
Same.
it everywhere. And I used to actually blog about it everywhere, like all the street art that I found.
That's so cool.
But I it was just so interesting being in the place that so much people had or so many people had felt the same kind of pull and the same kind of like need to be there
Yeah.
and stuff too. By the time I got to Boston, I was already exhausted and already like all this stuff. And there wasn't really a whole lot going on in Boston. I had a separate motive for going there. There was
Yeah.
someone that I wanted to see. And I learned a lot that summer too, but Reed hook up horror stories for that story later on.
All right.
Um, so yeah, that was a very interesting travel experience too. Like I had just on a whim, just like I gotta
Yeah.
go and
Yeah.
greyhounded it all the way.
Oh wow, from
Yeah, I was like a
California all
little
the way to
scared.
DC.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I started off well. So I Sacramento. I flew from Sacramento and drove up to see a friend of mine. Flew to Sacramento, or flew from Sacramento to DC.
Oh, okay.
Took a bus from DC to New York, and then a bus from New York to Boston. I was gonna stop in Philly too for another reason, but I was just like, this is I want to spend a little bit more time in DC. I was having such a good time, and I was staying with a park ranger at the time too.
Okay.
So he was showing me all the monuments and stuff
Cool.
that
Yeah.
it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really cool point that you pinpointed of traveling can help you see how the rest of the world is handling and dealing with and seeing it from a different part of the world than you. Even though it's the same country, it's far different. I mean, LA,
Oh
DC
yeah,
were very, very similar in a lot of things with the protests and everything, but like very different because it's East Coast versus West Coast, all these other parts and who is there. And obviously, with politics being centered there, it's hyper focused there.
yeah,
But I think it's not to dive into politics either, but like it's what I think hinders a lot of people that voted for a really horrible person,
mm-hmm.
that they don't see it that way. They don't see it through another lens. They see it through a very small, narrow lens and don't care what the other side, the other person,
Right,
the other gender, the other sexuality, the other part of the world or different than themselves think. They don't put themselves there. And that's a massive problem because even Mark Twain back forever ago said it like traveling is the end of hatred and the end of like judging. I'm paraphrasing and bastardizing his words, but basically he's like, if you travel, you can't have these things in you because you see it from different lenses than where you're from. You
yeah,
learn, you grow, you see it from another person's perspective, and you get all these different beautiful ideals and cultures and everything in you. So I think that's such an important part that you put to it of like I have to get somewhere different and see it from
mm-hmm.
someone else's perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I live in LA. Like it's not necessarily like we're in a bubble here. There's so many different
Right.
cultures and stuff, but I still felt like I was in a bubble of sorts. Cause
Yeah.
like, yeah, we have a different, like I've never been to DC. I've never been to Boston. I've never been to these places. I went to Minnesota for the first time just a couple months ago, the
Yeah.
place where all that stuff started.
Yeah.
And that was a completely different experience too.
Right.
Cause I wrote about it in a Medium article, but like I didn't see any artwork there. And I didn't know if it had been cleaned up or if they were just trying to like, keep everything hush hush or, whatever, but it was quiet. It was eerily quiet and it
Mm.
was pristine. So I was like, this is weird. Turns out a lot of the artwork had been commandeered by grassroots organizations that want to preserve it and
Oh,
want
okay.
to keep it in museums and stuff. A lot of the museums over there were even like denying that or denying because they were trying to like lobby to get the artwork installed in like some of the museums, the local museums around there.
Yeah.
That's literally history now.
Totally. Yeah.
And but museums were like, no, we just don't have the resources, or we don't want the the stigma or whatever, or like
Sure.
we're an institution, like we don't think we can handle it, like blah blah, blah this and that. There is some half-ass like
Yeah.
half-assed answer. So all these grassroots organizations have now started to collect it and put it in these archives and stuff now too. So I mean that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's just so important to get out and
Completely.
see all, see it from a different place. I mean, especially where you're talking like DC so different than New York, New York so
Mhm.
different than Boston, Boston, all of those places especially different than Minneapolis. I mean, it's a whole different world up in Minneapolis, and
I had no idea DC is something like 85 to 90% black.
mm, yeah,
It is a blue
mm-hmm,
city. And but if you go outside, into Virginia or
yep,
Maryland, just outside, it gets red.
yeah,
And it's just so strange. Number one, DC statehood needs to happen first of all.
100%.
Like it's still bigger than Rhode Island,
Right, 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 right.
but you know it's just a completely different realm. I had no idea that it was like that. I thought I was walking into like a Republican territory.
Yeah,
No, not at all.
yeah, and I mean, like you said too, you're in LA, but you can. I mean, we can all get in bubbles, right? Like in
Mm-hmm.
LA, in New York, I have friends in New York City, and they're like, I don't know any one on the other side because I don't have to because I'm here. And where I live in Nashville, it's the same way. I mean, in the neighborhood that I live in, it's very much like-minded with me and
Yeah.
open-minded and thinking. But you go 5 minutes down the road, and I mean, it is red as can be, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
different. But I'm in this safe little bubble, so I'm fine, and it's we can
Yeah.
all get sucked in. So I think it's so good to just go somewhere else, see all those different opinions, and keep
Yeah.
them flowing through.
Yeah. I grew up in a very small town, and my grandparents never left, and they're very Republican. They do not turn off Fox News
Oof.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
But that's just because that's just where they've always been. That's where they've always been. They put themselves in a little bubble. I
Yeah.
could not be in that bubble.
Yeah. Same. That's how my hometown is, and I just you said you were into the punk rock, and that's what
Mhm.
when I first heard it when I was young, that it kind of like gave me that escape, and I understood some of it, but I just was like, this makes way more sense than this on the other
Yep.
side. So I'm gonna follow this, and it kind of led me to where I am today, which I'm
Follow the
so
misfits. They'll never steer you wrong.
exactly. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. That's so good. All right, brother. To the last two questions.
Mhm.
The first one is, what would you want the world to know about you?
That life is what you make it, and that you're capable of anything. And I am capable of anything that I put my mind to. I felt like I've lived many lives at this point, and I'm still learning and living and trying to love. But you know, I'm the type of person that like if I am interested in something, I'll just dive into it. and I won't ask questions. I'll just like try to figure out as I go. That's how I started doing drag. That's how I started writing. That's how I started. I moved to Seattle with probably no even knowledge. I'd never even stepped foot in the city before in that state. And so it's just, if you are willing to take a chance and learn something new, that it could really change your life.
Yeah. That's something I preach a ton. Not really preach. Something I say a lot is just go for it. Take a chance. I mean, life's short. It really is. And at the end of the day, when it's your time, you want to be able to sit there on your dying bed and be like, man, I lived a fucking rad life. I took chances. I didn't play it safe. And I had that moment. I was on my deathbed almost 3 years ago, and well, I was told I might not make it till tomorrow, and it was really obviously horrifying, but it was a really beautiful, empowering night of like, I did this. I lived life my way. I went for it. I didn't play it safe. I lived a bunch of different lives. So I think that's so important for all of us to do. But I've loved hearing about all your different lives and your paths and your avenues. And I think it's really cool. Just getting to know you and seeing that part of you come out as we're chatting.
Thanks. Vice versa.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. We've kind of touched on it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you had the ear of everybody in the world, what would you say to them?
Deal with your trauma.
Yeah.
Everyone's got it. Everyone's got to deal with it. And you don't have to know everything. You just got to know what is right for you.
Yeah.
Try not to hurt anybody in the process.
Yeah. 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 Don't bring your trauma and fuck somebody else up along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that we're just now getting to the point where it's okay to kind of start exploring your dark side a bit more, and to be open about it and to talk about it in a comfortable and fresh sense. And it's not until you could finally start like living your life until you start dealing with the stuff that's holding you back. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to encourage people to just be open. Like, everybody's fucked up. Everybody's done shit they're not proud of, but we can all learn from it. There's growing in that in life.
Totally. There's growing in the knowing.
Growing in the knowing for sure. I mean, I was just speaking with someone who was talking about her 8-year-old niece, and she was like, you know what's amazing is your brain grows when you make mistakes. When you're not making mistakes, your brain doesn't grow because it's not learning something new. And it's like, take the advice from an 8-year-old child and make mistakes.
That 8-year-old child knows about neuroplasticity, and she should be hired. You're hired.
You're hired. Well, this has been so fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you and getting to know you and your life's journey. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being flexible and hanging out with me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
Cool. Well, you have a wonderful day.
You as well.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Beautifully Human podcast. To hear more beautiful stories from beautiful humans, follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at the Beautifully Human Podcast. Peace signs up.